Hello, everyone. No, wait. Okay. Okay, Nisrian, have you done the experiment? Okay, that means I'm gonna kick you out of the session and you have to go to Finding Five and do it right now. It's open. Okay, if I do it, you won't be able to join. So you should leave yourself, do the experiment. Yes, and then come back, okay? Goody, everybody else? I see. Okay, everybody else is good. Fantastic. Okay, guys, just to remind you that you cannot not collect your data. Even though I said I would put people in different groups, I don't want to do that. I really need you to participate. So 18 people are good. I have the data. And the 3 people will have to do it now. I opened a new session for experiment 2. So if you are one of these 3 people, you know who you are because I already emailed you. Leave the room, go to Finding Five and do the experiment. The same will apply to experiment 3. So lab report 2 is due on the 29th. That is 2 weeks from today, right? And then November 17th, a week before Christmas, you'll have to do experiment 3. Hopefully it's all now very familiar to you. Goody. Okay. So what we have on tap for today is 2 things. We will finish, hopefully, the last section of chapter 6 on the retrieval, moving us to 5 principles of memory, and then the remaining time we will dedicate to the article which you will need for your lab report 2. Now, I've asked by email and by talking to people who were here on Tuesday for you guys to actually do one of the activities, which is in section 5 of Blackboard, reading original articles on cognitive science. So this one is posted there with 8 questions. So what I would like to see when we are at that point, which is going to be hopefully in an hour, is your answers to these questions. I hope that you have done them in your Google Doc. If not, you will quickly transfer your answers to your Google Docs and I will be able to talk to you looking at your answers. All right, goody. So let's start with finishing chapter 6. Okay, here we go. Okay, good. Who remembers, either by unmuting yourself or by typing into the chat, what is the 3-stage approach that we are using? What you see now is stage 3. What are the other 2 stages? Encoding, fantastic, Raphael. That's number one. Who can do number two?
Storage.
Yes, very good. Storage. Now, we started talking about, good, Leroy. Yes, these are the three stages. We started talking about a framework that I think is the most successful in terms of getting all of this information into our heads by using the 7 principle framework of memory. Now, we've got through 3 relatively successfully, and the 4th one, we started talking about it. So let's talk about, not talk, but I would like somebody to quickly tell me, if we take the encoding stage, what is the first principle of memory? Again, either unmute yourself. Excuse me.
Elaboration.
Diamond, speak up again. I'm sorry, I missed you. It was very, very low, so I still didn't get it. Why don't you type it in the chat?
Elaboration.
Yes, thank you. Fantastic. Now, much better sound. Principle 1 is elaboration. And who can finish the sentence for the elaboration principle? Memory is a function of.
The extent to which the event is analyzed and related to like pre-existing knowledge.
Yes, excellent. Good job, Diamond. Even if you're reading from your notes, that's fine. Okay, who can do, let's see, I can maybe call somebody. Amanda, how about the second principle of encoding stage? Hmm. No, Amanda. Karen, what about the second principle of the encoding stage? Oh, where's everybody? Okay, somebody else. Who is there? What is the second principle of the encoding stage? Diamond gave us the first one, the elaboration principle. What's the second one? Organization, Parker. Excellent. So now finish the sentence. Memory is a function of. Okay, anybody else who could finish the sentence about the organization principle? Memory is a function of what and what? Raphael, what do you think? Memory is a function of. Okay. Irene? Mm. Leroy, can you help us? No, Rebecca. Go ahead, Leroy. Can you finish the sentence?
I have no idea.
Okay, so if you think back to what Diamond said, which is absolutely correct, that for elaboration, memory is a function of how you relate the new information to the one you already have in your memory. Now, the organization principle is memory is a function of how you relate pieces of new information to each other, right? Okay, I guess today's going to be a difficult day, huh? You guys don't want to do much. All right, move on. So this is our third stage. The other two principles from the storage, I'll make one last attempt. Can somebody name principles 3 and 4? We finished 3 and we started 4. These are the principles that apply to the storage stage. It has to do with forgetting. What happens during retention interval between the time of encoding and time of retrieval. Lord. Oops. This is our third principle. Memory is a function of the retention interval between the time of encoding and time of retrieval. That is, the longer the interval, the more likely you will to forget the information. Now, this is just about decay, right? Potentially consolidation and displacement, all sort of three back together, giving us that third principle, time dependency. So now we have elaboration, organization, time dependency. Okay, and the fourth one we started, I'm just going through what we finished, is this one, the interference issue. Now, just decay has nothing to do with how active or passive you are with the information that you're trying to recall. It just says that if the time increases, the chances that you won't remember also increase. But interference, this was what we did with the Brown-Peterson paradigm. I'm not going to do it again. I'm just going to. Okay, to the interference. Here is a nice slide. What happens if you sleep between the encoding and retrieval? As you can see, your memory is much better versus when you go about your day between encoding, and these are the syllables, and retrieval. So in the waking condition, a lot of stuff will interfere, and therefore forgetting will be forgetting will happen. So that gives us the fourth principle, the principle of interference. So memory is a function of how much interference happens between the encoding and the retrieval stages. So these are the first four. And today we will move on to finish quickly the remaining three. And these are Q dependency, encoding specificity, and state dependency. It's okay, Parker, I see you. Okay. All right. Isaac, did you do the experiment? Yes, I know he tried it yesterday, but now he can do it again. So Isaac, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you in the waiting room, go to finding 5 and do the experiment. Once you're done, you can come back. And there's one more person who did not collect data. Let's see. Just looking. Okay, good. So let's continue. Okay, so retrieval. Now, if you have put the information into the memory, what can happen? Well, we already talked about it. So forgetting is one of the options, that you just don't remember. You just don't remember what happened um, during the retention interval, either because the time passed or because there was interference. But sometimes, and there are people who do memory research who think that that's the way it is, everything is in the long-term memory. The problem is we cannot get to that memory trace called retrieval failure. Now, in the retrieval failure, that is, well, you don't remember what it is. While you know you had access to this information, retrieval failure is often um, a function of how much of a context do you have for the information that you're trying to retrieve. So there is information itself, let's say a list of words or some events or whatever else you might be trying to retrieve. And there is context in which that event, let's say learning of the words, happened. And the context means the time when it happened, and perhaps a location when it happened, and who you were with at the time it happened, and things like that. So if these, and we call these cues, if these cues, time, location, other people, a bunch of other things, are not particularly strong, or they're just too vague, then the retrieval may not happen. Not because you don't remember the information, you just can't get to it. It's there. So for example, we studied a list of words, not on Tuesday. We studied one on Tuesday as well, but during last week, week 6 for chapter 5. Now, so that's the cue. I'm telling you, hey guys, do you remember any of the words from the list we studied last week? And you would say, that's not very helpful, right? Yeah, there are many things that happened to me last week. And we'll try that in a second. So going back to the types of memory tasks that we've been discussing, we have these three. We have three recall, we have cued recall, and we have recognition. So free recall is something which we think as psychologists is the most difficult, because that's the one where those cues are extremely vague, ambiguous, in not too distinct from other cues. So here is my example again about the list of words we studied last week. So I'm telling you when the event happened. It happened last week, and these were words. And now let's see if anybody recalls any of the words from that list. Type in the chat if you recall any. Of course, to recall them, you would have to be present on, I think it was on Tuesday that we discussed these words. So if you were not there on Tuesday, of course, you can't do anything because you never memorize these words. So, okay, Rebecca says coat. I'm gonna check my list. Oh, no, Rebecca, that's from the list on Tuesday that had categorization. No, not the one. The one that we studied for the serial position effect. Does anybody remember what the serial position effect is? So we had 1, 2, 18 were presented to you fast from last Tuesday, Justin, not Thursday. Okay, anybody? Mountain, yes, Parka. Beautiful. Melissa, bulb, perfect, yes. At least one. 2. Amber, yes, Justin, perfect. Red. Yes. Raphael. Narrow. Good job, guys. Ah, now have you redeemed yourself from the beginning of the session. Girl. Good. King. Yes. Excellent, Justin. Good memory. Perfect. Now, of course, there were 18 words. Together with the four of you, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of 18, right? Nothing to write home about. But hey, one of the problems is that the cues that I'm giving you, right, are not very helpful. Yes, it was last week. There were words, there were 18 of them. We do a lot of verbal learning paradigm in this class, so of course. And Rebecca showed us that there is an interference from the list that we studied on this Tuesday. Okay? So free recall is the most difficult one because the cues are not very helpful. Sometimes there are no cues at all. So if I were to ask you guys, so today is what, October 15th, 2020. Let's think about October 15, 2019, unless it's your birthday. Do you remember anything at all from exactly a year ago? What happened on that day? Okay, what do you remember, Justin? No, really, I have a terrible memory. Okay, no, Amanda, there is no such thing as a terrible memory. It's very easy, not very easy, but it's easy enough to get it to the point, but it's good. So if you want to do that, there's plenty of stuff. All right, so back in India. Okay, that's why perhaps Justin remembers that day. So now imagine that I will give you a bit more than just saying, oh, it was the list that we studied a week ago on Tuesday. So in this case, I'm going to give you better cues. And the two of you have already gave us these words, right? So if I'm giving you a cue, asking you to do cued recall, and I'm saying there were colors on that list. What were they? But you guys already answered that question. You said amber, oh, and red. Perfect. So now you say, there were colors. So what if I say that there were some adjectives on that list? That is, adjectives are characteristics. Like you would say, somebody is beautiful. Beautiful is an adjective. It's a characteristic of that person. Purple. Uh, Leroy, that's from this Tuesday. Does anybody remember any of the adjectives from last Tuesday's list? So red and amber, of course, are colors, and then they also kind of adjectives. Anybody? There were words like rough, slow, narrow, happy. Does anybody remember any of these words? Okay. So that would be a cued recall, and that is better than free recall because at least it's some kind of a concrete information about what was on that list. So this one is not as hard as free recall, but the easiest one is the recognition. So if I were to give you now 36 words, 18 of them were on the list and 18 were not, you should be able to recognize many of them because the actual word is there in the list. It's also embedded among other words that weren't, but recognition is much easier than cued recall. So if we think about free recall, cued recall, and recognition, recognition is the easiest. Okay, so if I ask you whether the word orange was on that list, if you don't get confused with the one on Tuesday, this week, you would say no, it wasn't. And that's true, it wasn't. Some experiments. I'm just going to quickly show you the results of our friend Tolving and Watkins, his colleague from 1973, where people were given these three tests. Of course, the words were different, not to repeat them. So when they were asked to free recall these words, they only did 25%, which is pretty bad. In the cued recall for the list, when they were given some concrete cues, hey, the accuracy of recall was twice as good. It was 55%. But the best, as you can see, is the recognition. When somebody gives you the list with embedded fillers, you are very good at recognizing. So recognition is the easiest test because it gives us the actual word so you can match it to the cues of when it happened. So that gives us our fifth principle of memory. Memory is a function of the kind of cue by which memories are being retrieved. So the better the cue, the better the memory. The more concrete the cue or the cues, the better the recall. Especially important for free recall, less so for cue recall, and probably less so for recognition, again, depending on the retention interval. So that brings us to this idea that the cues during encoding have to be rich and have to be informative to allow you to retrieve the information. Okay, so if they're not rich, if they're abstract or not too concrete, they're not too informative, they're not going to help at retrieval. So this is not just the principles of retrieval, but this is sort of an interaction between encoding and retrieval. Again, showing you what you need to do when you try to memorize information. In addition to encoding using elaboration and organization principles, you should also think about the cues. That's why I'm going to say it again. Just reading through a text and highlighting does not help because it does not give you a chance to elaborate or organize, and the cues are non-existent when you read a textbook. Okay? So that's the interaction of the principles. Okay? So cue dependency, that happens at retrieval because you're matching the cues that are given to you with the cues that were either generated by you or were there. Uh-huh. I'm so sorry. Okay. Irene, yes, you can. Make sure that at some point today you do the experiment. Okay?
On the Finding Five, I did it
Yes.
yesterday.
You did? Oh,
I did, yeah.
somehow it shows me no results from you.
Oh, should I go check it now? I definitely did it though.
Yeah, I don't think you can get in again. You know what? I'll email you. I'll check myself during the break, okay?
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
All right. So that's the interaction. Whenever you're trying to memorize something, create your cues. Cues that will help you get to this information more successfully at the time of retrieval. When we talked about mnemonics on Tuesday, mnemonics precisely are there for the reason of creating those cues. Because if you try to memorize the words and you match them up with images, right? Images become very, very concrete and vivid cues that will help you to retrieve the information. So if you're trying to memorize a list, and we talked about method of loci, for example, loci means places. It's a plural of the word locus. You go to your store with the list of items you need to buy, because before that you actually mentally walked through your house or your apartment and you dropped the words in different locations of your apartment. And the locations in your apartment are very easy for you to remember. You live there. So the cues are really good. They are informative. They're saying, what did they put next to that lamp on my night table? Ah, whatever that item was. you will remember. So mnemonic devices work because of the cues. Okay? So this is described in the textbook for you called the encoding specificity principle. Okay? The memory is a function of the amount of overlap between information processed at the time of encoding and information available at the time of retrieval. That's why recognition works better than cued recall, and cued recall works better than free recall, because there is no overlap for free recall at the time of retrieval, but there is some overlap if somebody tells you, these were the color words between encoding and retrieval. And recognition, again, full candidate is there. So the encoding specificity principle, if you actually do an experiment, which again, we don't have time for, but there are plenty of these experiments available online if you have time to do so. What you have to do is, in these experiments, you have to, I'm looking for the page, you have to generate some cues. Testing effect, I'm looking, serial position curve, spacing effect, there's a bunch of them. So as you try to memorize your list, you can create those cues. And then and the cues are better when they are visual, when they are image-like, when they are vivid, when they are bizarre, for example. All of that will work. And then you just have to remember the cues and they will help you retrieve the information. So sometimes, and that has been tested in a bunch of experiments, you generate these cues yourself. So you're studying your words and you're saying, okay, if I have to come up with something for the word bulb, maybe it's that bulb that I have in my backyard or something, right? Versus somebody else generated these cues for you. So this is a well-known experiment. I'm not going to even give you all the details. I just want to show you the gist of the results. In this particular experiment, participants were given a list of words, and for each word they were asked to generate 3 associates. So if I give you the word bulb again, right, which was on Tuesday, quickly think of 3 other words that are related to the word bulb in your opinion. Somebody might type it in the chat for us. So when I say bulb, what other words come to mind? Light, okay. Light, lamp switch, lamp, good. Okay, somebody else? I'm looking for 2 different, well, different maybe. Okay, light, electricity, site, illumination, glass, perfect. So now imagine that once you generated these cues, so they tell you have to memorize the words, but there's also this additional task to create associates. Idea, okay, good. It could be a bulb from which, I don't know, a flower will grow, a different type of bulb. Now, when they bring you back for retrieval, remember the verbal learning paradigm has 3 stages. The sort of the learning phase when you learn the words, plus you generate the associates. Then there is the retrieval interval, whatever that can be, very short, very long, and then the testing phase. So verbal learning paradigm always has 3 stages. At that 3rd stage, one of the manipulations that they did, they gave participants associates generated by somebody else. Okay, so we will take Parker's 3 associates, electricity, site, illumination, and we will give them to Diamond. And Diamond would say, I did not generate any of these associates. So if that person is only given 1 cue generated by somebody else, the accuracy is abysmal. It's only 10%. But 3 cues actually help, even though they are generated by somebody else. Now, people suddenly recall half of the words. These are not their cues, somebody else's cues, but they still work. But see what happens when you use your self-generated cues. Even with 1, the accuracy is better than with 3 from somebody else. It's 60%. But if you're given all 3 associates that you generated, right, your accuracy is almost perfect. It's 90%. So it's a very powerful principle if you put in time during encoding to generate those cues. So 500 nouns, what would be 90% of 500 nouns? Wow, a lot, right? We know that our regular working memory span is 7 plus minus 2 if we are lucky. Here, this is enormous. And enormous because the cues were so good and you generated them yourself. I mean, you have a reason for saying electricity, sight, and illumination, perhaps, right? Or idea. And now final principle, because we really want to move on to looking at our article, is the principle of state dependency. This one is actually described quite nicely in the textbook. I'm looking at pages 138 through 140, and it is known as encoding retrieval interactions. That's, oops, see if I can get it right. It's this in the textbook, but this is a fun stuff. So one of the questions on the little exercise that we had, God, it was long ago, 7 weeks ago, was if you give somebody words to remember when they were either sober or intoxicated, that is, they had something to drink, will their memory be better at the time of retrieval? So the idea is that if you match not just the cues, right, the time, location, who you were with, but if you also match other things, and these other things come in a variety of flavors, so your own internal state, that is, the way you feel at the moment of encoding. And then if you bring yourself into that stage, into that state at the time of retrieval, your memory is going to be better. So presumably, if you were sober at the time of learning, you should be sober at the time of testing. In this case, the states for you are the same. Which also means, surprisingly, right, that if you were plastered during the time of encoding, for whatever reason, or stoned, whatever else, under the influence of various medications, that's the state you should be in when you have to be tested. Now, I'm not saying that drinking alcohol during studying and then testing is good, or taking pills. All I'm saying is that the matching of the internal state of your body matters. In general, if you are drunk when you memorize and when you're tested, your memory is going to be worse than if you were sober. But the matching will help. So that's the internal state. There's also external environmental stuff. One of the simple things is if you take a, well, we're not doing it now, but if you take a class in a particular classroom the entire semester, you should take the test in the same classroom at the time of testing, because the environment, the cues from the environment will be the same, right? They will match. That effect is not huge. So if somebody has to move you to a different room, your score might go down, but not necessarily a lot. Still much better to do that in the same environment. So that gives us sort of the generalized view of the 7th principle, and for now it's the last one, that memory is state dependent. that it's a function of the amount of overlap between the organisms, physiological state at the time of encoding, and organism's physiological state at the time of retrieval. Or you can rephrase it. It's a function of the amount of overlap between the organism's environmental state or environment and the organism environment at the time of retrieval. Okay, there are a couple of really neat experiments from 1970s. Here's the format, right? We alter, well, we get two groups of people, right? Or we get a group of people and we randomly assign them to two separate physiological states. So you'll sign a consent form that you don't mind drinking, I don't know, 3 ounces of vodka versus 3 ounces of water. Or we could say, we will give you some caffeine. That is, you're going to have your learning phase without any coffee, and we'll ask you not to drink any coffee before you come. Or you will be in the group that will be given a nice cup of joe, and then you will be given the words, right? So one group will be a control group. They had water or nothing. The other group will be experimental group. These people will have either vodka or coffee. Yeah, I can see Amanda. No, sometimes we don't have a choice. Sometimes it's not because we want to change the room. It's because the administration does it to us. Okay, then the words or information is presented to you. You either under the influence of alcohol, in this case, under the influence of drug, or you're not, right? So that's the learning phase. Then there is some retention interval. Sometimes it's very short again. And again, now what's going to happen is that you will take, so to make our life a little easier, let's take an example of 40 people. So 40 people will participate in the experiment. When you guys were 21, you participated in experiment 2. These are 40. So 20 of them will be assigned to, I'm just going to use the coffee example. It's a little easier. 20 people will get nice large coffee and 20 people will get water. So they should drink something. It just cannot be something that has caffeine in it. Okay, so they learned the same words, the same 20 or 18 words. Retention interval happened, usually not so long. All these 40 people came back to the lab. Now we're entering the third phase, which is testing. So what we're going to do now, we'll take the first 20 people who were the control group. They only had water. We're going to split them in two, 10 and 10. 10 will be tested under the same conditions, that they'll have some water. But the other 10 will be tested under the conditions of having coffee. The experimental group will also be split in two, 10 and 10. So first 10 will be tested under the caffeinated condition, which matches where they were at the learning stage, and the other 10 will be switched to water. So now we have 10, 10, 10, 10. For two of them, the encoding and the retrieval conditions are the same. For other two, they are different. And that's sort of the general format of all of these studies, of which there are quite a few. And what was found, I'm going to show you the results in a second, that memory is the best when the conditions between encoding and retrieval match, right? So if you studied when you were caffeinated, you should be tested when you were caffeinated. If you studied when you had water, you should have your testing done again with water. Now, the most famous one of those is our favorite Ellen Baddeley, the person who remembers what Ellen Baddeley is famous for. Well, it's now, Leroy. I'm asking you about Alan Baddeley in general. What is he famous for? we watched a little clip of him talking to us about something. What was that? Working memory, yes, perfect, yes. Alan Baddeley is the father of the working memory framework. Perfect. And he, like I told you, he's still with us. Leroy, remember you asked me whether he may be having Parkinson's because it was a bit of a tremor in his presentation. Okay, so with his graduate student at the time, they recruited Navy SEALs, that is, military guys who are being trained to become uh, Navy SEALs. So in the learning phase, half of these people were on land wearing their scuba gear, but sitting on the ground. And they were given, whatever, 12 words. The other half of these Navy SEALs were in the scuba gear and they were underwater. That's an interesting question, how they actually presented the words to them if they were underwater. Okay, but doesn't really matter. So half of the seals are on the ground, the same words. The other half are underwater, same words. Okay, now you know what's going to happen once the retrieval, the retention interval is over. They are asked to recall these words. Again, we split both groups in half again, and we have two groups for whom the conditions match and two groups for whom the conditions don't match. So these are the results. If you studied underwater, you learn these words, and you were tested underwater, you can see the, well, green is good. You can see that these guys had a pretty good memory for these words. That little asterisk here means that this was statistically significant. Now, the other guys, right, the other half that studied, well, half quarter, that studied on the land and were tested on the land actually showed even better recall, right? You can see that this is maybe 11 and this is 14. So 14 words, so it must have been like 20, I guess, versus 11. Okay, so match, you good. Match, you good. But being less stressed being on land boosts your accuracy. But you can see what happened in the mismatch conditions where encoding and retrieval were mismatched. So you studied your words underwater, but you were tested on land. Oops, you just about 8. If you studied on land but tested underwater, now it's whatever, 9. So these differences are significant, showing us the state dependency from the point of environment. Okay, clear all the drawings. Good. Let's look at another one. This is about mood inducing effects. In this case, participants were brought to the lab and they were asked to listen to some music. All right, and half of them listened to sad music. Albinoni, anybody? Really puts you into a foul mood. You just want to cry when you listen to Albinoni. The other half of people listen to Mozart, and Mozart is very light. Of course, it was a small night uh, serenade symphony, which is very upbeat and bright and cheerful. Okay, and they only listened for about 10 minutes, and then they were administered a questionnaire that established their mood at the moment. And lo and behold, the same questionnaire, the happy people were happier. That is, people who listened to the happy Mozart music were happier than people who listened to sad Albinoni's music. Okay, so they established the fact that this manipulation of creating mood worked. And then without waiting too long, because, hey, these effects are very sort of fleeing and they will disappear quite soon, They split the sad group into two, and they split the happy group into two, and they gave them the words to recall. Now, as you can see, the uh, the picture looks exactly the same as the one with the scuba divers, right? If you're in the sad mood, your recall is actually pretty good. It's like 32, whatever they were. I think they were words too. Versus if you were in a happy mood, it's also good, but this difference, maybe I should do the annotation again. This difference is also significant. So it's interesting. Think about it for a second. So being in a sad mood, sort of having negative thoughts, actually boosts your memory. Being in a happy mood doesn't do that much for your memory. But, oops, I went too far. Oops. Right. But being in a happy mood to begin with and being tested, the sad mood gives you only half of accuracy for words. The same here. So match, 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 match works. Mismatch, mismatch, the cues don't match. The state doesn't match. Cues in form of a state, right? Finally, I think that's it in terms of illustrations. It's clear. Oops, I didn't do that. Okay. Something that you could relate to, perhaps. This is the studying conditions. As students, you guys study all the time. You can imagine a situation where you study with noise. That is, you have your TV on, you're wearing your headphones, your music is playing, maybe your family's chattering in the background, whatever it is, okay? Versus when you study in quiet conditions. Okay, so these are the test scores. As you can see, if you studied in quiet, and well, you studied in the quiet conditions and you were tested under quiet conditions, your score is the best. If you studied with noise, that is, you had your headphones on and you go to the test and they allow you to use headphones, which is not always the case, you also will do well, not as well as in quiet condition. But the worst happens when you studied in the quiet conditions and now you're taking a test with noise, then your scores really plummet. Also similar with when you studied with noise and you're being tested in the quiet conditions. So here is a little sort of take-home message for you guys. I don't think a lot of faculty will allow you to take your tests with your headphones on, especially. That tells us how you need to study to maximize the match between the learning phase and the testing phase. If you are always tested in the quiet conditions, that's how you should study. Yes, it's sometimes difficult to wean ourselves from our habits, but if you want to maximize the results, you should. You can put your headphones on, but don't listen to anything. Especially bad. Again, we have these results. I'm not showing you these results, but if you want to, you can Google them. The worst thing you can do is study with noise when there is human speech. That is, songs with lyrics. So instrumental music affects your results adversely as well, but it's not as bad as when you're listening to songs with lyrics. Or TV where people are talking, or your family members. So whenever there is speech, in addition to the fact that you have state dependency issue, you will also have what's known as irrelevant speech effect. The two of them will combine to really, really drag your scores down. So don't do that if you can. Try to wean yourself away from studying with anything else but silence, as long as our uh, testing is like this. So just to give you, okay, good, Isaac, thank you. Just to sort of do my little civic duty is, yes, we know that students, especially in high school, have those farm parties where they exchange Adderall, for example. Somebody who takes an Adderall will presumably do better on uh, taking Adderall during the learning phase and then taking it during the testing phase. But in general, I already showed you that these experimental conditions are worse than the control conditions. Any kind of drug will impair your memory, so try to avoid that if you can. Okay? But otherwise, within those limits that I just described, the match will produce better memory than mismatch for encoding retrieval interaction. What we also know, again, there's tons of experiments with anybody who smokes. Nicotine is one of those um drugs. So if you smoke when you study, you should smoke when you're being tested, which never happens these days, right? You can't smoke inside. So nicotine has a very powerful state dependency effects. Drugs of in terms of marijuana do have some effects, but it's much more nuanced. So you actually have to look at the conditions, the type of the drug, and so on and so forth. Surprisingly, there is no effect of caffeine. Again, from a number of studies that were published in the early 1990s. So if if you're doing it when you had your coffee, both ways, it doesn't seem to matter that if you then do it without coffee. Maybe because college students are just live on coffee. America runs on coffee, right? So very strong effects with smoking, moderate, a lot of variability effects for various kinds of drugs, like recreational drugs like marijuana, or more attention deficit disorder like Adderall, and no effects of caffeine. Yes, Jeffrey, excellent question. Yes, we do have studies that looked at chewing gum. That is, what will happen if you chew gum when you study these words and then you're going to go and take a test? Nobody's going to tell you to stop chewing unless you are doing like an oral exam or something. And we do have these effects because what happens when you chew? What happens when you chew chewing gum? Can somebody guess? Why does chewing gum produce state dependency? Makes your brain think you're eating. Mm, you are onto something, Jeffrey, but not quite there. Not quite. It's really chewing gum and eating may have similar implications, but the mechanism is different. So what happens when you're chewing gum is you create an aroused state, because when you chew, you have saliva. Saliva goes into your stomach, into your body, and all of that creates the arousal state. If you're not chewing gum and you don't do anything else for arousal, there is no arousal. That's why chewing gum works as well. Excellent, Jeffrey. Perfect thinking. Good job. All right, let's finish with this general picture. So we have discussed, at least I have presented to you, these 7 principles: encoding, elaboration and organization, storage, time dependency and interference, and retrieval, Q dependency, encoding specificity, and state dependency. So if you bring all these 7 principles to your own life and your own study, you will see substantial results. There will be no such thing, Amanda, as terrible memory if you know what you need to do. Okay? All right, it's 11:07. So let's have a break until, let's say, 3, 4, 11:15. Okay, while you're on the break, if you're not doing anything else, bring up your Google Docs. And I would like to see the answers to these 8 questions for the Nairn et al. Study 2 that you will use for your lab 2. And that's what we will spend the remaining 45 minutes of our class on.
Professor,
Go ahead, Rainey.
would you be able to check my finding 5?
Yes, perfect. That's the time for me to do it right now. I will report to you in a minute.
Okay.
Let me go. Oops. All right. Let's close this and go to finding 5. Okay. Not here. Not here. Let's see. Participation. Isaac. Yes, you are number 1475. Yay, perfect. So for whatever reason, it didn't give it to me originally, but now I can see it. Perfect. Thank you, Rainey. Sorry for screaming at you.
No,
I hope I wasn't too harsh.
no, not at all. Thanks.
All right, you're good. Okay, we don't need that anymore. Perfect. Let's see. Okay, I need to do the poster.
Professor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Isaac.
Does it say somewhere like the details about there were 28 words you had to remember and how much time? Because I don't know if I'm gonna remember that exactly to when I write the report.
Okay, Isaac, let me say it very loud and clear, not just for you, but for everybody. The way the Finding 5 experiment was designed is exactly to match the design of the Nairn study. Have you read the article, Isaac?
I don't know if I finished the article.
Okay, but did you start? Okay, do you have it in front of you?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
It's about I don't remember, but
all right, so what I will do,
I know
Isaac.
part of what it is. But it's exactly the same format.
Absolutely to a T, because remember, Finding 5 is me programming these scripts as opposed to CogLab. So Isaac, have a look. Let me just minimize this, share screen. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, Isaac, do you see the article on my screen? Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, see table 2 on the left?
Yeah.
These are exactly the words that you were presented with. There is one other little thing. That's why we are going to go through this article in 5 minutes. Ari, it doesn't really matter. I would prefer your group Google document. So whoever your partner is, let me see. You are working with Leroy. You guys have a Google Doc, right? Good, Leroy, yes. So put your answers in that Google Doc. So I will go there. But first, I just want to make sure that that we have this. Already did. Perfect. So Isaac, are you still with me? Or you stepped away?
No, I'm here.
Okay, good. So your first question is, what were the words? These are the words. How many words, Isaac, do you see in this table?
Well, I remember it said 28, so.
No, just look at the table.
1 second. I can only see part of it.
Hey, I'll move it up. How about now? Ah, too far. Sorry. How about now? Can you see all of them?
There's only 24.
Good. How many of them are animate? How many of them are inanimate?
12.
Very good. And Leroy is following me too. Perfect. So now, Isaac, follow me to the previous page. Okay, remember the previous page gives us the method. Okay, here's the method. We don't care
So
about
there's not
participant.
28 words?
Look, Isaac, let's find the description. Okay. Look, do you see the right column? It says, as noted, half of the words, right? 24 were presented in random order to each participant with only one constraint. We don't care about that. Each word appeared for 5 seconds. Look at this. Let me get the highlight. Isaac, see that?
Yeah.
So you are correct saying that there were 28. But out of these 28, 4, yes, were not included into calculations. They were presented in the beginning of each trial and at the end of each trial. Okay? Why, Isaac? Do you think you can come up with an answer for that?
Those are probably the easiest to remember.
No. They all are about the same to remember. Why did, and it's not just if somebody is still with us here and not taking a break, if somebody can answer this question, why these 24 words were preceded by 2 words in the beginning and 2 words at the end? The answer lies in chapter 5.
I mean, maybe the primacy recency thing.
Yes, yes, Isaac, perfect. We don't want the recency effect, the last 2, and we don't want the primacy effect, the first 2. That's why I'm going to show you my little cheat sheet because, of course, I didn't remember what they were. Okay, so in trial 1, paper and queen were primacy words, and robin and cover were recency words. But if you don't mention them in your text, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is, if you think about how our design matches the one from the article, that's what you will need. So, and that's the reason. So once I took out all these words, there's 4 for each trial, so that's actually 12. Right? But the remaining 24 are exactly the same. Did I answer your question, Isaac?
Yeah, but that's right. So for the method, it's still that there were 28 words presented.
Yeah,
That's
we just don't care about the 4 of them. So if you were to say that 24 were presented, I will still think that that's okay because I only care about these 24. When I was, I started tabulating the results.
Did I get all of them right?
If you tell me what your, I mean, I have this information. I can tell you if I already coded you, but I don't know. Let me check. Okay, because I have your participant number, of course.
Probably could have got the last one if I thought for another minute. I think
Okay, Justin, you're 1181. Okay, let me see. I'll tell you if I haven't done everybody because I downloaded the stuff in the morning. 1181. Well, I can tell you what you did. So for the first trial, Justin, you got doll, turtle, wolf, slipper.
I even get Justin's or mine or Isaac's.
I'm sorry. Phew, looking at Justin's. No, Isaac, I meant you, but I'm looking at the wrong column. Isaac. Oh, Isaac, I can't tell you because I have to download your data, which I don't have yet.
Okay, all right.
I can tell you later if you're interested. Okay, time. First, let me do the roster. Today is what, 15th Oct. All right, I need you to say here even though you might have already participated. Justin. Denise. Justin is here. Denise is here. Okay, good. Denise. Brandon.
Here.
Good. Melissa.
Here.
Good. Jeffrey. Good. Julia. All right.
Here.
Good. Noor. Karen.
Here.
Good. Parker. Here. Ari.
Here.
Good. Leroy.
Here.
Good. Diamond.
I'm here.
Good. Nick.
I'm here.
Good. Becca.
Here.
Very good. Amr. Good. Raphael. Excellent. Isaac, of course, you here. You don't have to do it again. We just talked. Irene, I know, is in and out because your mother needs some help. Nisreen.
Sorry, Professor, but did you get me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm here, Professor.
Good. So you collected data, right, Nisreen?
Yeah, I did.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bishoy? And Amanda. That's fine. You can type. That's not a problem. Perfect. Okay, good. So now, before I look at your Google Docs, which we'll see how that will work, let's start thinking about the article itself. So let me share. We don't want this. Well, let's start with this first, actually, and then come back to the article. Okay. As you know, I have graded your Lab 1 report with various comments, but they are all in the rubric. So here is my very, very strong suggestion to you guys. When you write your Lab 2 report, you write it with the rubric next to you. Okay? Just to remind you that there's still a few people who could not do the title page correctly. Just to remind you that this is a little large, so of course I'm showing it to you at 130%. Yours will look smaller. So there is no header or running head in the margins because APA 7 does not require it for the student papers. So those of you who continue to put on stuff here at the top are wrong. Don't do that. All you need to do is put the page number. Then comes the title. Here there were things all over the place. This is what I would like you to start with. You have to identify the independent variable. Again, this is experiment 2. Then you'll have some kind of a verb. When I say the verb, this is in the rubric. All right, so in the rubric, you'll see that item number 1 says, what does it say? Contains variables, the verb, accurate, informative, specific, concise. So if you start with this, the independent variable affects the dependent variable, assuming that it does, right? That's the first good step. It may not be the best title, but it's going to be correct. Then comes 2 lines, author first, author second, with the word and in between. Another 2 lines. Affiliation has 3 parts. And course information has 2 parts, and then date. That's it. The next point is to make sure that your text does not get pushed. When you are here at the date, in Mac, on Macs, it's a little different. I'm using PC, so I'm showing you the PC version. You have to do Control. You can't see that, but I'm holding Control with my left index finger and I'm hitting Enter. What's going to happen? You will create a page break. No matter how much stuff you may want to put here, this will always be the beginning of the page, right? Here we have our abstract, which is centered. And who remembers how many words is it capped at? What's the maximum number? A bunch of people remember, good. Let me get the chat. Yes, thank you. Justin, don't ever use enter to create a new page. Let me show you what's going to happen. So let me get rid of all of this. So now I'm just going to hit enter. So, well, if I hit enter going down, see, this is abstract. See what happened, Justin? It's not at the top line anymore. And if I put something here, I don't know, keywords, whatever, keywords, maybe I can write it in 2 different ways. It gets pushed even further. That's why you never use enter. You use Control plus enter. See all of this? These are all your enters that are pushing your text down, creating a non-APA looking. So Control, document, Control enter, abstract. Thank you, Amanda. It's exactly correct. 120 words. I'm just going to say here, max. It could be fewer than 120, but usually you need every single word of those 120. Again, the next component, which is the actual text, starts on a new page. So Control, Enter together. Here you need to repeat the title. This is the title, right? You physically repeat it. And I already told you why, and I can, maybe I didn't. Did I? Oh, I want to copy it, not to cut. The reason why the title is repeated, because the title page is stripped when the article is being reviewed. And you can always come back to the first page and you'll see the title, because title has to reflect what you're talking about. All right. A couple of people did something really strange that I could not understand. They said first paragraph and made it a heading. It's like, why? It's not a heading. There's no such thing as first. This is how I talk about the text, because I'm asking you to write using the square paragraph rule. But there is no such heading first paragraph. It's the actual paragraph. So now I'm ready to go back to the article. Share screen and go back to the article. Let's go to the front. Again, let me repeat again the fact that this does not like APA. And the reason it does not like APA, because this is the style sheet of this journal, the journal called Psychological Science. When these people wrote the manuscript, it looked like an APA manuscript. Once it was transformed into a published article, some of the stuff is gone. But you still have the same components, right? You have the names. This is the format that you have to have on the title page, right? You have the abstract. You don't have to have keywords if you don't want to. I'm not asking, okay? And if you were to count the words, you'll see it's 120 or less. Here is our first paragraph. what you guys did, many of you for Lab 1 report, was all over the place. The first paragraph is meant for your grandmother. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. It's meant for somebody who is not a psychologist. It's meant to introduce the topic in general. So if I use they say here, cognitive processes are tuned to solve adaptive problems. Yes, because this is the first paragraph. Oh, why didn't it do? Okay, here we go. The key sentence, which normally is the second sentence of the paragraph, is actually here early enough. So what are they doing in this first sentence? They're saying, well, there is cognition, right? Here is this word. There is also adaptive problems because it is about evolutionary mnemonic value of, and look, they say adaptive memory, and that's what they already have in the very first sentence. And then they give us something like physical systems do this and mental systems do this. Note how they cite what's called the in-text citation. So when you are citing this article, which you will have to, there is only two ways of doing that. You can either start with saying Nairn and colleagues, and in parentheses, you'll say in Nairn's, I'm typing in the chat, and at all, period, 2013. Okay, that's one in-text citation format when you start the sentence with the people's names. The second format is the one that they're using. They're giving us a sentence, and then at the end of the sentence, yes, it's period and comma if there is a year. If there is no year, just period. Or at the end of the sentence, you're going to say Nairn et al.
I
2013.
don't see what you're typing.
In the chat. Am I typing? I'm typing to everybody. Do you guys
Oh,
see what I'm typing?
yeah, I was looking at the share screen.
No, I'm only doing that in the chat. Oops, except I made a mistake here. Yes, et al. Thank you. My typo. Look what happens in the second sentence. They say in the case of memory. So what they're doing, they're using what we call an hourglass shape. Okay, you start with the general introduction. You're using words like cognition, adaptive problems, and then memory. So you're narrowing down until you're going to get to the bottom line. Okay, so they're saying in the case of memory, something, they say we've done some work on fitness relevant events. So this is not about that experiment yet. So in your first paragraph, you're not talking about Nairns yet. You're talking about these general things: memory, animacy. Why does animacy? You have to introduce animacy there already. So you have to give a definition of animacy, an example, and then explain based on this article or in general, why do animate entities matter so much to us? If anybody has a child in the family, ask that child to name animals, and they'll just rattle a bunch of these things. Ask them to name, I don't know, tools. They'll maybe know one. There's something very, very special about these animate words. Kids are very attuned to that. Kids have incredibly good memory for animal names and not so good for other things. So there's something special. What is this special? If you're not lazy, you could Google that and find out, right? So here is the paragraph that has 3 sentences, very general, but supported by in-text citations. All right. So if we go back now, let me stop sharing this and go to our template. Sure. Okay, we don't have the word first paragraph, but we're going to start with something. All right. So what are the things that we care about? Well, we care about memory. It shouldn't be bold, of course. I'm not writing full sentences because I don't have time for that. We have animacy. Why is it doing? Ah, I see why. Okay. Just get rid of this. Animacy. Why? Why is it special? And it has to be geared to a layman, not a psychologist. So once you have written this paragraph, read it to your parents, even to your grandparents, or to anybody who has no college degree. If they understand this paragraph, you're good. This paragraph is meant to hook you. Well, you, the reader. The reader should read it and say, why is it indeed that we remember words like spider better than the words like slipper? Okay? But you're not mentioning Nairn at all, because now comes the second paragraph, and this is Nairn et al. Now, the problem here is not to plagiarize, because really what you need is the abstract, but you can't do that. So you need to talk about the following things. You're not using any lists, any bullets, or anything like that. I'm doing that because I'm trying to be as efficient as I can. So first, we need the hypothesis from them. A research question. These are similar things, not necessarily identical. Can somebody quickly identify the research question? No, Isaac, we don't need to use keywords. I'm not requiring them. So you all, not all, but I hope most of you read the article. What was the hypothesis? Come on, guys. We need to act quickly if you want me to get through a lot of stuff. If you sit there quietly, I won't give you an answer. I'll just move on. Come on. The animate words are easier to recall. Yes, yes, than inanimate words. Perfect. So that's the hypothesis. Now we can say, if we want to put it into a research question, we say, are inanimate words, or animate, whichever way you're going to go, animate words easier to recall or to memorize or whatever else you want to say, right? Then comes the method. We don't really care a lot about details. We want to start with the task. What was the task in Nairn's experiment? Okay, now remember, Raphael, this is a three-stage approach. So we have a verbal learning paradigm, right? It has stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So in stage 1, what did people have to do? Raphael says memorize 24 words. Yes, we don't need a lot of details here. We need this stuff. Then we need the design, right? The design has to do with the variables. What was the independent variable or variables? What was the dependent variable or variables? Okay, that's important. Can somebody quickly tell me? There are two ways of answering the question about the independent variable. One is the simplest one. The other one is a bit more complex, but what I will do, I will give you a choice. If you do the simplest one, I'm fine with that. If you want extra credit, do the design that they have in the article. Leroy, you have an answer?
The words were independent variable.
So remember, Amanda, this is one independent variable, not independent variables. And I need you to understand that there is difference between the name of the independent variable and its levels. So who can give me the name of the independent variable? You're very close, Leroy. So you could say, what can you say? Anomaly of words. Diamond, you mean animacy, not anomaly, right? Okay, animacy, right. Yes, we can do that, or we can say types of, oops, words. Note that the names of independent variables are almost always capitalized, just so that they stand out. So this is the name, and it has two levels, like Amanda said. Level 1, or value 1, or condition 1. All of these mean the same. Is animate. Level 2 is inanimate. Okay. And the dependent variable, we can quickly do that. It also has a name, right? We already know its name. Oops. Recall, yes. Or Diamond, Amanda, Nick, be more precise. Accuracy, thank you, Nick. It's accuracy of recall of words. That's its full name. Measured in, what are the units? How do we measure accuracy? Well, it's the same one we had in lab 1.
Correct or incorrect?
Yeah, well, correct and correct percent, right? So what's the maximum? If our participant remembered all 12 animate words,
100%.
yes, thank you, Leroy, thank you, Amanda. What's the minimum? 0, absolutely, right. If a person did not recall anything, it's going to be 0. So we need to say, so this is the conceptual design, but they actually had a more complex design, and that's an extra credit question. If anybody wants to do that, put it in a chat privately to me only, okay? If you do that, I'm going to be fine with that. Method, we don't really care about procedure that much because we don't have much time, well, much space. Next is the results. Here it is critical that you use the results, the actual numbers, and the numbers are going to be not the statistical statement. Let's look at that. Let me close this, sharing, and let's look at the article again. Probably easier to go. This is the figure you need, and that actually shows the actual design. But what I want you to do is to focus on, let's annotate, on these two bars, okay? So what do we see here? If, Amanda, the answer to your question, if you're using the extra credit, the full design, yes. If you're using simplified version, only these two bars. Let's look at the black with dark bar. Who can quickly calculate the percentage correct, approximately? About 65. Yes, Amanda, perfect. Who can give me the light gray percentage? Again, approximately. Yeah, 54, 55. Perfect. You guys are doing well today. Note that you have an access title here. Oops, I'm not doing a very good job. And you have the legend. right? You need that. And this is an APA looking figure. That's how your figure should look like. So now we'll go back to my little cheat sheet. All right. So what are the results? Because remember, we have to match the results to the design. So what was the value of the dependent variable for animate words? Well, animate were recalled at 65%. Again, I'm just being approximate. And inanimate were, let's make it 55. These are the two numbers that we have to have an introduction, because that's the only place besides discussion where you can use the original article. You cannot mention it anywhere else, not in the method, not in the results. You can only come back to that in the discussion. And in the discussion, you need to compare your results with theirs. And you can't compare if you don't have numbers. Our final component of that, this is paragraph 2, right? Everybody's with me, is the conclusion. No, we don't call it discussion here. Did they find support for their research hypothesis? Yes or no? Yes, they did. Thank you, Amanda. Amanda is ready. I think Amanda is the only person who is ready. Okay, so you'll say, yes, and they found, looking at the difference 10%, and is it statistically significant? Going back to, sorry for making you dizzy by going back and forth, but I think it's a little easier than put them all together. Let's go to the previous page. Okay. It says results in discussion. The reason why they combined it, because it's a short article. I don't want you to do that. I want you to separate the two, although technically you could. Now, where is statistics here? Ah, that's the stuff in yellow. We are using statistical terms here. You guys, many of you haven't had 266 yet. Many of you didn't even have 201. So I'm not asking you to do anything sophisticated, but if you can figure out the simplest statistical test that you will be able to do here, and the hint is, it's the same one as in lab 1. All you have to do would be to write the symbol for that test, followed by what's known as degrees of freedom, followed by the obtained value, forget all about all of this, and just a p-value. And then you have to describe it in words. So here they say there's a significant main effect of word type. Yes, Amanda, good job, but it should be a lowercase t and in italics, okay? So you would say, if you were to use a t-test, you would say there was a significant difference in recall of animate words versus inanimate words, followed by the way this should look like is just a statistical statement, not writing out and that the value was this and the degrees of freedom were that. We don't use that. We don't explain all of this because these are the standard statistical terms. So you're using an actual statement, but not in the introduction. That's just for you. And then you explain it in words. Okay, stop sharing. And now go back to this. So we are done with paragraph 2. I'm just gonna, I don't know, make it, oops. This is gonna be paragraph 1. This is gonna be paragraph 2. Please don't use colors. I'm doing it to make our life a little easier. Our last paragraph of the introduction is your stuff. So now what are you doing? Well, you're trying to, let's make it, I don't know, green. Our hypothesis. Is our hypothesis any different from theirs? Okay. Design in terms of you're not explaining it. Now remember when you talked about Stroop effect, you said, well, Stroop did it on paper. He asked people to name colors, right? But he gave them a piece of paper that had 100 words printed. You guys did it on the computer. So your design, it's almost like procedure, right? Here. And predictions. What do you predict? Of course, you have to see your results yet, and I will finish coding, if not today, tomorrow, definitely, and post it. Okay, so that is your introduction. If you want to have the word introduction, you can, not a problem. It's optional. So if you have it, introduction, right? So it is 3 paragraphs, which is approximately a page and a half. Because of the square paragraph rule. Done. There is no new section, as we know. So I'm going to switch to black color. And I'm going to start method. Okay. Method was actually almost good for many people, with the design and materials being the hardest. Okay, here's method. We have the 3 subsection participants. Design, I'm going to skip participants because that's the easiest stuff. Many of you are good. So hopefully, once I check the results from today, we will have all 21 people. And our gender composition is 11 to 10. I think it's 10 men and 11 women. It's like that. Ethnicity, age, you can just say that these were traditional college students of various ethnicities and stuff like that. Not that we really care in this experiment, but it's sort of something that APA style requires you to use. So design and materials. Here is where a lot of issues came about. Okay, we're gonna start. The very first sentence is gonna be task. What did you, because you were the participants. So that's an interesting point. You are writing both as experimenters and as participants. So when you write as experimenters. You forget that you were the participants. But I'm using the word you, so you understand you're not describing nairns. You're describing you. What did you have to do? Really, then comes the design. Okay, so we have independent variable, dependent variable, or more if you're doing full design. You also have to have a number, because remember there's the word materials. So for each level of IV, you have to say how many items. In this case, our items are words, right? So number of items in each condition or level. Again, it's the same. Because I told you, our design is exactly the one as theirs. You can use this stuff. Just make sure there is no plagiarism. Is a no. All right. So the way to do that is to close the article and put it away and write without looking at it. And also for each condition, give examples. Right? How was the dependent variable measured? What were the units? Okay. All of that. This is the design. If somebody wants to, the whole idea is if somebody wants to replicate this experiment, right, all they have to do is read your method section. That's precisely what I did. I took Nairn's method section and I completely replicated it for you. They didn't give me any buffer words, so I invented them, but that's fine. I know what the buffer word is. There is final sentence here, which is going to be the stat test that you will use. So you will say the data data is plural, just to, I know you can see, so I'm going to move it. The data were analyzed, and Amanda has already answered that question using a t-test, but that's a very specific t-test, which you have to say what it is. I'm going to say blah, blah, t-test. Okay, final component is procedure. Here is the problem. The problem is to separate design and materials from procedure. Remember that procedure are physical steps. So what were the physical steps? Well, you have finding 5. You had whatever else, the way the items were presented to you, what you had to do physically, right? What was the presentation rate? How did you respond? I think people in Nairn's experiment just wrote down the words. You were doing it on the computer, so you were not writing anything, you were doing something else. Okay? Fine. We continue typing. Good. Now we are in the results section. Okay, let's finish that. I think we won't have time to look at your stuff. We could do that next time, right? On the 22nd. Okay, so here we also have 3 paragraphs, but please don't use the headings. So I'm just gonna say first para to make my life easy, second para, and third para. Okay, I'm gonna put them all in those square brackets, meaning that it's my imagination. There is no such heading, okay? I keep saying it because one group did that and I was so surprised. I just couldn't understand where that came from. Okay, so the first paragraph is really the same as the third paragraph of the introduction. Who remembers what the third paragraph of the introduction was? Yes, good, good. I feel like I'm working with Amanda. Amanda, you and I, we can do well. Now, here you could also be a bit more specific if you know what it is. You can say the null hypothesis. This is the statistical, shouldn't be capital, the statistical implementation of the research hypothesis. The null H, the alternative H, so this is H0. Yes, you haven't done statistics yet, but that's not a problem. This is very, very simple stuff. I'm not asking you to do anything major. All right. Predictions. All of that comes from the last paragraph of the introduction. The second paragraph is your descriptive statistics. Now, I suggested that you use JASP, but you could even do that in Excel. You can even do it by hand because oops, where is it? Because it's very simple. Maybe we can look at JASP next Thursday. So what we need the mean, and we need to give it a subscript. And the symbol itself, well, this whole thing has to be in italics because it's a statistical symbol. I'm using Nairn's numbers because I don't know yours yet. So mean animate was 65. In parentheses, it's going to be standard deviation. That I have no idea what it is. Standard deviation is an abbreviation that is allowed to be an abbreviation in, okay, and then you're going to repeat the same for inanimate. And you don't write the mean average of the, you say that the animate words were recalled better or worse, and then you can put these. The way to do that is to look up, oh good, somebody, yes, the null hypothesis, Amanda, you're right, is when there is no difference in means. So the descriptive stats is all about means and standard deviations, and that's where figure should be as well. It's going to be figure 1. It has to have a caption. It's all in the APA manual. Caption and no color. So it's black and white, no lines, and so on. You have to figure out how to do that, or you can ask me questions next Thursday. Create a figure, and I'll tell you how to improve it. Oh, final paragraph. Gee, we're running out of time. Okay. Okay, so maybe your answers to the questions you can do now yourselves, or bring them to my attention on the 22nd when we talk about the entire lab report. And final paragraph is inferential stats. And here we already decided that's going to be a t-test, but I didn't tell you which one. An easy question to either Google or to ask a psychology tutor, on which we have plenty online. T-test that should look like an actual statement. So it's going to be something like, so T followed by degrees of freedom equals the obtained T, T followed by obtained T followed by P. And then you have to explain it in words. Again, your grandmother should understand what you're saying. Just providing a T statement is not enough. So you need an interpretation. Read, let me go back to the textbook. Did you notice something interesting about chapter 6 at the end? Where are we? I'm going to show you this. This is page 146. It's the end of chapter 6. What do you see here? What does it remind you of? Yeah, the article. That's right. The article is explained here at the end of chapter 6. Yeah, right? I give you a lot of questions from the textbook, if you've noticed. So if you read, you will actually know. Okay, interpretation. Okay, finally, you will have, if you use null alternative, you can repeat that here, and then the research. Your, okay, let me make sure that I say your research hypothesis. Was it confirmed or was it disconfirmed? Okay, it's 12:01. I'm just gonna say discussion and give you the quick discussion. Okay, discussion doesn't have any subheadings, so headings level 2, but you have 3 paragraphs. I'm not gonna type it to save space, time. The first one is, again, a repetition of the last paragraph of the introduction, but it's already in the past tense. Did you find evidence? Did you confirm? Did you do that? The second one is important. That's where you will compare your results with Nairn. That's why you need these numbers, the numbers from the introduction, 2 of them, 2 means, if you're doing the simple design, or more if you're doing a complex one, and your 2 means from the results. And you say, look, Nairn's participants recalled, Nairn's et al. Participants recalled animate words at the 65% and inanimate at 55. We recalled animate at blah and inanimate at blah. And our numbers may be different. Is the pattern the same? Are animate words recalled better? Yeah, not. If yes, we find we're in business. If no, you have to explain that somehow. Why were your results different from theirs? The final thing, of course, is references that start on a new page. Control Enter. How many articles are we going to have here? How many entries? 1, exactly. That's going to be Nairn, the full, which I was going to ask you, but we will start with that on the 22nd. Okay, I hope that was useful. I will post the results, like I said, most likely tomorrow. I don't think I'll get to them today. And you can start doing data analysis and other things and prepare your draft for the 22nd. So before I do anything, I will go into your Google Docs. So you have to do your drafts that we discussed. October 22nd, all right? That's a week from today. You need to have a draft. In your group Google Doc. And you can ask me anything you want. I can read a paragraph and tell you when it's written well. I can look at your statistics. I can look at your figure. I can look at your references. I can do whatever you want me to do as long as you have something to show me. Because I don't think I will have a class like now. I will actually go through group to group to group. Okay? Any questions quickly? I have 1 minute. Otherwise, the class is over. And I will see you guys on Tuesday. You're welcome, Yusrin. Thank you, Amanda. Take care, Jeffrey. Melissa, Raphael, thank you, guys. Parker, good.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too, Leroy. Stay well. See you next week, Amber. Yes, take care, Denise.
Oh, Professor.
Go ahead, Justin.
Okay, so the abstract, right? So basically, the abstract is like what we did from the experiment. It's like a summary, right?
Right. The only thing is that there is one first sentence, Justin, that is about sort of the theoretical component. So it's the adaptive memory, right? It's evolutionary value of animacy. So the first sentence could be the sentence from Nairn because they are the ones
The
who did
article,
that.
right?
Yes.
Animacy.
And the rest of the abstract is your stuff. And it has to be written with the results
Wait, your
in
stuff,
mind.
like you're meaning like the
Finding
experiment we
5.
did
Yep.
from a class.
That's right. So you're not discussing Nairns in the abstract at all, except for the first sentence.
But can we like still use like certain examples from the article?
Yes, the problem is you may not have space because you only have 120 words. So you have to be
Wait,
very
120
concise.
I can't go above that?
No, you can't.
All right, so 120 is the max.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so the first, so basically the first sentence is talking about the relevancy of the experiment.
Well, relevancy of animacy as a cognitive category.
Okay, and the rest is about us.
Right. It's our method, our results, and the conclusion. These are
Okay.
your 6 sentences, is max that you can do.
Okay, got it.
Okay, Justin. See
All
you
right.
next week.
Have a good week.
You too. Bye.